You're listening to The Real Deal Conversations, a podcast designed to encourage, inspire, and equip you by sharing real stories and meaningful conversations that bring real life to the surface. I'm your host, Megan Deal. Let's dive in. As many of you know, my heart and goal in the show is for everybody to know community, to step out of the isolated mindset that keeps us in a frozen and sometimes broken state. And I believe that one of the most powerful things we can do as people and as the community around others is to share our story, because it is through our journey and our story that others can get encouragement, that others can be inspired and see hope to step out of the isolated mindset that they are in. And so I hope that that is what happens for you today with Coach John Perry. John Perry is the head football coach at Nixa High School. John is a certified mental performance coach, as well as the host of the Never Stop Getting Better podcast, which I have listened to several episodes and I highly recommend you listen to it. With a wealth of experience, John has become a sought-after speaker, and today we're going to hear about John's life behind the scenes, and I hope his behind the scenes empowers you and encourages you as you listen. John, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I'm privileged that you would ask.
Well, I am excited. So your story obviously starts way before graduating high school, but we're going to kind of start today at, you graduated Pearl High School in Pearl, Mississippi in 1989, and then you attended Hines Community College, which is where you learned different things about, not quitting and failure. And so tell me about that.
Well, it's funny, and God has been at work in my life, whether I knew it or not, probably my whole life. But in this instance, I go to Hines and it was probably 40 minutes from home and I'm homesick because I'm a mama's boy and I'm 40 minutes from home. And I think the coach at Hines is absolutely crazy. We're practicing 3 times a day. My girlfriend had broken up with me, so I'm thinking I'll never have another girlfriend. And we had dated for 5 years all the way through high school, and then practice is hard, life's tough. And, about 6 or 7 days in, my roommate quits. And my roommate was from Pearl. He quits and turned in his key, and I thought, man, that sounded like a great idea. Like, he came back to the room, called his dad, said, turn my key in today, and I quit. I'm going to come home. And his dad said, come on home. So now I'm still miserable. I'm still, broken up from my girlfriend. I'm still homesick. I'm still all of that. Now I'm doing all that by myself in a room, and I'm still going to practice. And this thought of quitting just keeps coming. Like, that would sound like a great idea. Like, I don't want to do this either. So I stopped by Coach Murphy's office and I turned my key in. I said, Coach, I'm just not going to be able to do this. Like, I can't do it. I quit, And I go back to the dorm room, just like my teammate did. And I called my dad and I said, Dad, I quit today and I'm coming home. The only issue was my dad didn't say the same thing my friend's dad said. My dad said, well, it's okay if you quit, but you need to find you somewhere else to live. You can't come here. And, you don't know my dad, but I knew that he wasn't joking. So then I started thinking about, where am I going to spend the night tonight? I don't have a key to the room and we don't have any family around here, I just wasn't sure what to do. So the best thing I could come up with was go back to Coach Murphy and ask him, could I get my key back? I said, I made a mistake. I don't really want to quit. I don't know what I was thinking. And he graciously gave me my key back, went back, and it's amazing how your perspective changes, and I ended up staying, ended up loving it, ended up transferring to Harding University where I meet my wife and go on to become a coach. And, really the lesson is don't quit. If you don't quit, you can't fail. But also, sometimes you need people smarter than you to help you out, because now you look back at it, like, whose dad really loved who the most? You know what I'm saying? Like, my dad had enough love to, force me to stay and make a better decision, which, as it turned out to be pretty good, because great things happened. I don't know that I'd ever been a coach. I would have never met my wife, I'm from Mississippi, she's from Georgia, and we met in Arkansas in college, right? Like, that would have never happened. So it was just an early lesson in, tough love sometimes is the love that you have to have. You know what I'm saying? And he gave me some tough love that day that I have thanked him for several times over.
Yeah. But I also think too, how you had to go back to your coach and get the key back. Like how hard was it hard for you? Was there some like pride involved in that?
There might have been a little bit of pride, but I was more worried about where I was going to spend the night, So when your back is against the wall, you will do whatever it takes. And I didn't, I had watched my parents kick my brother out of the house for bad behavior. So when he said, you can't come back here, like he meant it. Like there was no, I got it, So I got to find a place to sleep. And football is not that bad, like all of a sudden it was a lot better, and life turned around, I got another girlfriend and, ended up, we were really good at football. So it worked out pretty good. But, it was a turning point that had he said, come home, I don't know that I would have ever finished school. I don't know how life would have turned out, but it was a little thing that made a big thing.
And would you be where you are today?
No way. Like I don't even think I would have ever finished college, first of all, but I know I wouldn't be where I'm at today for sure.
Which I think is really important for like young people to hear, because they think that the decisions they're making are they don't realize how there's so much permanence to it. There's so much
no doubt
future effect. Like, okay, yes, it's hard. It sucks. Get over it. Like move on. Like it's a temporary feeling.
And there may be a time when it's the right time to quit something or to back up and go down another road, but not 10 days in just because it's hard, just because you don't have a girlfriend, just because you don't have a roommate. Like all of those are excuses. Like that's not the right way. Now had the season played out and I didn't like it, it wasn't for me and it wasn't a fit, my dad would have probably let me come home and, but you don't quit something you started, and you don't quit just because it gets hard, because as we well know in life, it's gonna get hard, like that's one of the, I guess my favorite things that I feel like I do with kids is try to prepare them for a path that's going to be hard, because adversity's coming to everybody, like it or not, and that's part of life.
Yeah. When I was listening to one of your episodes this morning, and sorry, I'm going to sidetrack real quick, but you were talking about that, like it was a situation on bullying, and it was basically like, be thankful that they are able to learn those lessons at a younger age, and it like gives them a firmer foundation to work through those instead of being an adult. And you're like, wait, how do I work through my coworker not being kind to me? And I was like, oh man, that's so good. I was like, I actually know a few people who could listen to this episode. So anyway, but yeah, like just, no, that's good. So your first book, is it author Bear Bryant? That seems like was that an impactful book for you?
He was the head coach at Alabama, probably the greatest coach to ever live until Nick Saban comes along. And, it's funny. I was never a reader. I didn't like reading. I didn't the very first day that I was a teacher, I was hired back at Pearl Junior High, which is where I graduated. And that's where I was going to teach and coach. And the first day you have that staff development, right? And staff development sometimes in schools is boring. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there in the library going through this staff development. I turn around and grab this book off the shelf, and it just so happened to be Bear Bryant's autobiography.
Which you guys have to understand. My whole family is into sports. I am obviously not knowledgeable because I just said, "Is that an author?"
It's all right. It's all right. And you're not from the South, I don't guess, but and Bear Bryant's been dead a long time. Okay, but I read that book. I took that book off, and I started, and I loved it. Like I absolutely loved the book. I loved the whole thing. It was really the first book I ever really read, which kind of ignited, this desire to read. And I didn't get serious about reading for, years after that. But, like the funny thing is that book, when I got to the end of it and the last page, it said, "Best wishes, Paul Bear Bryant." He had autographed the book, so I thought that was pretty cool. Like that, and I still have that book today because it means a lot to me. But that ignited, something in me that, I wanted to be a reader. And I ended up, years later, like, now I'm probably 100 books a year. I wake up every single morning of my life at between 4 and 5, depending on what season it is, and read for a minimum of 30 minutes to an hour every day. And it has changed my life. And I've been doing that for a long time. But it really started with that first book.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So just a side note. So like, what are some books you like? Do you do a lot of autobiographies? Do you do a lot of leadership? Like, what are some things that you're into?
I read anything that I can get my hands on that deals with, culture, leadership, and some autobiographies, but Like some of the best ones I read, I listened to Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I listened to that on a 12-hour trip to St. Augustine, Florida, and it is the greatest, most impactful book I've ever read next to the Bible. I turned around and listened to it on the way back, just to make sure I got it. You know what I'm saying? On Fire is a book from John O'Leary. He lives in St. Louis. He was burned up as a kid and, lost his hands, and fantastic book. I will read in anything. And now when I read, I start trying to reach out to the authors and have a, conversation with them. But, it is turned into an extreme passion, which has, I feel like, helped me grow, every day.
That's awesome. So you have, you got married in 1995 to Stephanie, and then your daughter Haley was born in 1998. But then fast forward in 2000, you hit a roadblock in your journey and you were let go from Pearl High School, and there was some lessons in adversity.
Oh, yeah. Now think about this. Now I'm sitting here thinking about that when you said that. I'm like, what were they thinking, right? Like, what were they? But anyway, I had been hired back at my high school and had spent 6 years there as an assistant, and, honestly didn't think I would ever leave, right? I mean, that's where I graduated from. My high school coach had hired me, and then they hire, he leaves, they hire another coach, and he comes in, and I think, just we all have these egos that, sometimes are out of control. Well, I thought, like, this is a no-brainer. Like, he'll keep me because, like, I'm good, right?
Yeah.
So I go in and interview with him. It goes great, I think, and go home. And so we go back for the second interview. And when I walk in, he says, I'm not going to be keeping you. I'm going to go a different direction. And man, I was floored, like I was 30 years old with not even 30, maybe 28 with a, 2-year-old kid or whatever. And, to make that drive home and have to tell my wife that, we just got fired. Like, we're going to have to go somewhere else. And I got fired from my own high school, So, I mean, like, it was tough. Like, that was, you want to talk about a bruising to your ego, man. Like, I was, I was destroyed. Like, that was a very, very hard pill to swallow and a very tough pill to swallow. I had to go home and tell her and to move. And, now you fast forward life, okay? I didn't know at the time. I knew, but I didn't know. Like, I knew because, I grew up, my dad was a preacher, and, we were in church religiously, but I had kind of, I guess, lost thought of that, God is the real quarterback. He's really calling the plays. And what he saw was I needed to be fired, and I needed to be run off, and I needed to figure something else out, because as I look back, I wasn't a good human. I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't a good father. I wasn't even really a great football coach. Like, I thought I was, but I wasn't, I wasn't none of that, And then when you get fired and you move to a new town, and it's you and your wife and your kid, you don't know nobody else. I mean, all of a sudden you start depending on each other more because, it wasn't fair to my wife. I was in my hometown having a blast. She don't know anybody. She's from Atlanta. So, I was being a miserable husband at the time and a miserable dad. But when you go off somewhere else, you kind of start to lean on each other. And then, the guy that hired me was probably the greatest football coach in the history of Mississippi. He's a Hall of Fame guy. So, like, God kind of, kicked me, I feel like, but then he threw me in a direction that saved my life. Like, it saved my career. It saved my life. Being able to learn under that guy and being able to focus, with my wife and just, it was, like what I should have done and what I would tell somebody else to do. If you're 28 and you get fired, when you walk out, jump up in the air and say, hoop, hoop, hooray, right? Because something great's fixing to happen, man. It's just not meant to be here. Let's go figure this out, because it is one of the biggest blessings that I've had in my life. But at the time, it was one of the biggest hardships, and I should have known better.
Yeah.
I should have known better, but I didn't. I mean, we were 100% living a worldly life and going to church on Sunday and doing whatever on Saturday night. And, it was much needed. And I think that's, that's the way God does us,
Where you can either be rooted in self or Christ. And when we root ourselves in ourself to the point where we completely reject what he's trying to do, he will give us over to ourselves.
No doubt.
He will say, okay, my hands are off.
Sure.
Learn the hard way, just like we do as parents.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to let you learn the hard way.
Sure.
But I'm going to be here to catch you when you're ready to come back, you know? And I say this story a lot. Some people may be like, gosh, Megan, but God led the Israelites on the long path because he knew there was a war ahead and they wouldn't be prepared.
Sure.
And so people always scoff at the wilderness. They always scoff at the hard time. But if it wasn't for that, and that's where people have two choices. Am I going to lean into this and learn, or am I going to crawl into a hole and die?
Yep.
And it's the people who lean in and learn. And I understand we all have to process the emotions and feelings and process, okay, that sucked, that hurt. So I'm not taking you away from that or taking listeners away from that. But it's the ones who succeed. It's the ones who become where you're at that choose, okay, I'm going to lean in and learn, even though it sucked, instead of crawl and die.
Yep.
So, and that's what you did. And that's why you're here doing what you're doing.
Sure.
So,
well, it's one of those things that at the time, you don't understand, because, but then in Proverbs where it talks about, the furnace is for gold and the Lord tests hearts. I mean, the way gold is made, I've often thought now in reflection, like you put gold in this furnace and you turn the heat up and the impurities rise, you scrape them off, you turn it up some more, the impurities rise. Well, that's our life. Like we go through battles so that, we can at some point in time be somebody that he's proud of. And sometimes some of us have to go through a lot of crap to figure it out, and I have, just because I have been hard-headed, I have been, hard-headed sometimes, and it's taken some tough things. And that's life, man. Like you're either going through adversity or you've been through it or you're fixing to go through it. Like it's coming, now adversity can also be seen as a blessing. There's something great on the other side of that. And as long as you understand that he has a plan for you, it's not your plan, it's his plan. And his plan sometimes, is a little crooked for us, or we think it is, but it's actually the right one.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's yes. So it was 2000 that had happened, but full circle moment for you. 2008, you were hired back. So you had 8 years to figure some things out.
Sure.
What was it like to come back? Because God obviously gave you a second chance.
Sure. Well, it was awesome in that when I left, I was not really a terrific human. And, there were people in Pearl, like school board members that, when they had went like 1-9 and we had a really good team at the school I was at, and they had gotten beat one night, like the third, fourth game of the year by 50 points by a private school, which should never have happened. And that night, people started calling like, we need to get you to come back down here. We need to get you, because, whatever. But there were actually people on that school board that had to be convinced that I had changed because they remembered me because I did this. Like my first year as a head coach at Kosciuszko, we played Pearl. And I promised my kids if we won, because that was a big game. Like I was still mad at Pearl, right? And we won. And I promised them if we won, that I would do the worm on the 50-yard line after the game and that we would eat pizza on the stadium, on the field.
Did
and
you
we
do the worm?
And I did. And I hurt my back, but I did it. So there were people upset about that. Like there were people that were, and I shouldn't have done that. Like I was young, man. I was still stupid. And so they had to be convinced that I was different, and I was different,
Yeah.
So it was great to get a redo, and some of those same people that, probably helped run me off today, I'm great friends with because it wasn't them. Even the coach that fired me, it took me years. Till I thought, you know what, man, like, why would I be mad at him? He did what was best for him. Like I can't control what he did. And, we ended up being friends and, it worked out the way it was meant to be, but getting the opportunity to go back was really fun. When you get to go back to your hometown and be the head football coach, like I was the first head coach of that school to have graduated from that school, and I took great pride in that. And the people in that town took great pride in that. And it was really fun.
What a testament to healthy relationships and healthy self-reflection to say it wasn't his fault and also that you're friends. How often do people go to their deathbed blaming everybody but themselves? how many relationships did they miss out on? How much personal growth did they miss out on? How many opportunities in life did they miss out on because there was no healthy self-reflection?
No doubt.
And I've heard that in your podcast too. Like a parent had emailed you, and instead of,
That's
I was
right.
so impressed by this because I was like, man, a parent emailed him and was like,
it was bad.
Yeah. And he still is saying, I self-reflected. I'm like, man, that's powerful because there's not many people who can do that.
What's the alternative?
Yeah. Well, curling up.
Yeah. I mean, the alternative is you're mad at somebody. And they don't care if you're mad at them.
They don't. It's like, it just eats you away.
Yeah.
So I think that's really powerful and such a testament. And there's many things that just through your podcast that I've heard that I'm like, man, I am so glad he's coaching our next generations because you're not just a coach. Like even just what you said is like another testament to your character and the things that you are able to not just tell athletes, because we can tell people all these things, right? But if we've never actually lived it or understand it or apply it ourselves, it's hogwash. Like, what is that?
That's right.
It's air.
That's right.
And so the fact that like you're able to say the things you're saying, you're able to say to a athlete's like, man, this guy just ripped me to shreds. Well, you know what? I've been ripped to shreds in an email, but I self-reflect. And so like, you're just a great guy.
Well, I'm not that great, but it is, like part of life is understanding that, if you are in the arena, why would you give too much voice to the people outside the arena? And if you can take anything from that to be better, I mean, if God wakes us up to have another day, let's have another day, and I mean, and the Bible's pretty clear about what it says about forgiveness, right? Forgive 7 times 70. Like it don't say if you feel like it, like you are supposed to forgive other people. And life's too short to wake up worried about an email or, a parent that's unhappy or, getting fired. I mean, look, I had to have a role in that, like had I been as good as I thought I was, I probably wouldn't have got fired, like you have to be able to look at yourself. And there's so many people today that want to blame other people and want to complain instead of look in the mirror first. I mean, what's wrong with you? Fix yourself. You can't fix nobody else, so you can fix yourself. And, that's hard to do, but to me, it's just better, and I still have trouble with that. My wife will check me pretty regularly, but I try really hard because I think self-awareness, I think 95% of people say they're self-aware and really about 5% actually are. Like, I think that's really hard to do, and so I try really hard to work on that.
But that's kind of that growth mindset.
Sure.
Like something I'm real big on is, what are you rooted in? Like if something bad happens, what was that root? And getting to the very end of that root and then uprooting it so that we can fix it.
Sure.
Also understanding like what you in that email that you were talking about in your podcast, should it have been done in that way? Self-reflection, but also understanding not to take everything so personal.
Sure, no doubt.
And having like people understand, okay, not everything is about you.
Sure.
Like, okay, the main points that you could take away and change, yes, that's about us. We control what we can control. But the anger that came through, okay, that's not you. Like that's something that they can work on. And so understanding like our youth, understanding not everything that comes your way is about you. Like we don't need to take it so personal. Like fix what we can, discard what we can't.
And I'll tell you something that helped me in that manner greatly was I read Abraham Lincoln's autobiography. Everybody said he was one of the greatest presidents. So I'm like, well, I'm going to read it. So I read about him. And there was a point in time in the war where he told the general, I don't know if it was McClellan or whoever it was, he said, now's the time, go, proceed. And he didn't go and proceed. He just didn't. So, Abraham Lincoln wasn't there, but he was furious. Like he was furious because he's the president. He told him to go and he wouldn't go. He sat on his hands and decided not to go, no matter what the reason was. Well, Abraham Lincoln sat down and he wrote him a letter. And man, he's giving him the 3rd degree, man. I told you to go. I'm the president. Why didn't you go? Well, when Abraham Lincoln died, that letter was in his drawer. He never delivered it. Okay. Like he got it out of his head and he got it on paper, but he didn't deliver it because what he ended up telling himself was, if I had been in his shoes in that position that he was in that exact spot in the world, had been raised under his circumstances, under his parents, I might have made the same decision. Who am I to judge somebody else when I could have been just like them? Because had I, as we sit here, had I been raised by your parents in your time frame, went to your school, did the things that you did, I would be very similar to you. So, when I sit there and think about that parent that got mad, I think that could be me. Like that's not his fault. Like that's not, like he's a product of his, own identity. And that's not like, I just learned how to give people a pass. Like I'm not going to get worked up about somebody that's upset or mad, or I'm a pleaser. I want to try to work it out, and to me, had I retaliated with that guy, it probably wouldn't have been positive, but if I learned, and I did learn something, like we may not have lost a JV game since then because I went to work and figured out how can I be better. Okay. And we're friends to boot. So, it worked out great.
That's awesome. To be friends again, just
sure.
Healthy relationships, healthy conflict. So you were hired back at Pearl. Now, something you and I briefly touched on before even starting this was a very significant thing in your life. And that was your daughter, Haley, getting sick.
Sure.
And it totally changed your world and your thought process.
It was awful. Like we had been back at Pearl several years and had gotten pretty good. And that year we were top 5 in the state. We were picked to, have a chance to win it. And the day of our first team meeting of the year, my wife calls and says, Haley has had a seizure. Haley was at her work. She had a seizure, which perfectly healthy junior in high school. We, really never had any issue. Extremely intelligent. She was one of my, what I call gridiron girls, one of my managers. And anyway, so we go to the hospital. She has that seizure, and I skipped the team meeting, which I've never missed anything, like that in my life. And we're just floored. But what ensued was probably 6 months or so of multiple seizures every day. So a common day for us. And gosh, it was 10 times, 100 times worse on my daughter than it was any of us. Okay. Because she's a junior in high school, and you know how high school is, and people, and a normal day for us would be for us to go to school, which obviously when you're having seizures, you can't drive. So, we would get to the high school, and then she would go to class, and it got to where I would just sit around. I taught driver's ed, and I would just look at that clock, and I would hope that she wouldn't have a seizure. But just about, every day by 10:30, she'd had a seizure. I'd go get her, take her home. We had family that moved in to live with us so we could continue to work. And, it was just awful. It was awful for her, and it was awful for us. I mean, there's no pain like seeing one of your kids suffer, and we're trying everything in the world to help her, and we can't seem to get it figured out, and life was just flipped upside down. We had to take her bed and put it on the floor, so if she had a seizure in the middle of the night, she wouldn't fall out. We had to, sit in the shower when she was taking a shower, and she was a healthy, 16-year-old girl, and then me and my wife, like most people, when they start going through adversity, we weren't handling it very well together, and it was tough. It was just one of those times that, we probably should have maybe asked God. We were going to church and we were praying but I don't know that we really leaned into him because we were steady trying to fix it, just like any parent would, but we couldn't fix it. We were trying so hard, and, and there was actually a night where, my wife and I laid down in bed, held hands, and said a prayer and said, God, look, man, you're going to have to help us out. We can't do this. We can't do it. We're struggling. And our families were struggling. It was tough times, Now, I would love to say that the next day she didn't have a seizure, and that's not really the truth. But, it wasn't too long after that we were able to quit having them daily, spread them out a little bit. But, for me personally, the thought of football was on the back burner. We ended up having a great year. We ended up playing for the North State Championship. And, I can remember that night, after the game, just thinking, I wonder if she had a seizure because she had made it through the day or something. And, so you was hoping she'd make it through the ball game, and you just learned perspective. It does matter, and when that happened, football kind of took a back seat to her, you know what I'm saying? And it was just, I don't know, it wasn't as important as it had been, good, bad, or indifferent, that did change, and it changed us, that was a very trying time. And that's, again, we were better coming out of it, we were able to handle it.
How many people are going through something and they're married and it's trying their marriage? And I think it's really actually powerful that you just said we came out of it better. Your marriage was
Sure.
taking a toll, but you didn't give up on each other. And not only did you not give up on each other, you came out of it better, and you're still married to this day.
Yep.
And so I think anybody who's listening, if you're personally going through something and it is trying to your marriage, it is taking a toll on your marriage, take that as encouragement. Don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. Yes. Is it hard right now? Yes. Not taking that away. But
Sure.
look at, Coach Perry and how they're still married today because they didn't give up and let the battle take over them.
Sure. And you got to give people a pass. I mean, the way she was handling it, the stress makes people do, strange things. And the way I was handling it was different. And, it was tough. But what you have to say right off the bat is, like, we're not going to let this whip us. You know what I'm saying? Like, we going together, we can figure this out better than separately. You know what I mean? And it was a challenge, but I think that's just the way life is, right? Like, I mean, everybody is going through their own struggles, and it doesn't have to be, your kid having seizures, but your pain is, important to you, and how you handle it is important, and not being able to, not turning on your own, when things don't go great, because, it's not. Now, me and my wife today are in better position than we've ever been in our life. And there are things we do now that we didn't do then that would have helped us tremendously, like taking a walk together, praying together, like doing things and, being one when at that time, we probably weren't, like we were divided on what was going on. We were divided on how to handle it. We were divided on a lot of things. And, at the end of the day, neither one of us knew. We might as well have been together, and fought it together instead of separately for a while.
Right. And also, you had mentioned that during that time, it was kind of what changed your perspective in coaching, where you had said football was on, in the back of your mind. And so was that kind of the catalyst for your coaching mindset moving forward? What started that? Like the mental performance coach and the change?
I think I was very much a transactional football coach for the early first half of my career. I think the Haley thing ignited something inside of me that made me figure out it was more about human beings than it was football. So there's some point in time, after that, I decided that we were going to have a purpose and a vision and teach core values and, try to help kids be better in life than just in football. So, like we will teach core values, we will teach them the skills that they need to be a successful husband, to be a successful employee. Like we're going to stress the things that make them a better person all the way around. And then what's crazy is when your purpose is to try to serve others and make a difference, like the football just got better, because they were more bought in. They worked harder. They showed up better. Like, everything got better when we went to work on the behavior skills that matter in this life. And, I think that was a little bit of a starter for that. Now, the reading, about that time, I started just every day reading, and, that ignited even more of it, as we go. But, having core values, having a vision for your program, like doing things the way that any great business would do it, like Apple has a fantastic vision, right? I mean, Chick-fil-A has a fantastic culture. I mean, but when you study some of those things and you start trying to emulate it, it helps.
Which you also do, you're talking about core values and culture. So there are kids who don't have that. They don't have that.
Sure.
And so you do something about that by pouring into those kids.
I'm going to tell you what's common in the world is to have an issue and to talk about it. Okay. So like, a coach would come in and say, man, that kid has terrible body language. He has terrible body language. Well, okay, what are you going to do about it? Like, okay, he's got terrible body language. Like maybe he wasn't taught body language as a kid from, maybe he didn't win the lottery with parents. Who knows? Okay. So we started teaching lessons. So if we noticed a problem, then we put together a lesson and we taught it. So we taught positive body language. We taught, how to be confident. We taught, the skills. And so instead of blaming other people or just saying that there's a problem, we wanted to fix the problem. So fast forward, I mean, that's easy when, the guy says, I'm the worst JV coach in America. That's a problem. fix it. Don't complain about it. Like complaining's never solved a problem, right? Like complaining's never fixed a relationship. Complaining's never added value to nothing. Just try to fix it, And then, the other part of your question, the mental performance training. When we come out of COVID, I started having more phone calls from parents than ever before with my kids struggling. Like my kid's been isolated, my kid's struggling mentally, and I didn't really like my go-to now is let's fix it. Like let's get in there and try to help. And I didn't really have what I felt like was the correct tool belt to do that. So me and Chance Potts, I talked him into doing it with me. We went and got mental performance certified, where they would teach us the mental skills and exercises to go along with trying to help kids be better between their ears, because it's all racket. It's all stories. How do we stop a negative story? Like there's a skill to stopping a negative story from being on repeat, and that isolation wasn't good for anybody, much less kids. So, the thought was, let's go figure out how that we can find some drill skills and activities to help them, be better. And I started meeting, if a parent called, I started meeting with that kid one-on-one and trying to get them out of it, trying to give them some things to do that might overcome that. So, even that was, the thought was, how do I help? How do I, if my my personal core values are curiosity, serve others, and make a difference. If I'm going to try to make a difference, I better figure out, how to make a difference. And that added tools to my toolbox. And it's been fun. Now, me and Chance Potts lead businesses through mental skills training. Like we've taken our parents through it. We take our kids through it in the summertime. Like, so it's been awesome.
Yeah. No, I love that you just said serving others. It's so, one of the traits of a leader is to look for how you can serve, not how to be served.
No doubt about it.
No good leader has the mindset of how can I be served? No. That's not a leader. So, I love that one of your core values is how to serve others. Sure. That's powerful.
Well, there was a song when in church that I always loved, and it was "This Little Light of Mine."
Yes.
I'm going to let it shine, I just want my light to shine. I want to, and look, man, life still sometimes can be very hard. We still have challenges. We still have adversity, and nobody knows what's going on in the life of somebody else, because the only thing you're going to see on social media are the smiles and the positive things. Well, life's hard, right? So there's adversity happens, that is part of life. But, like when you put yourself into the mode of serving other people, it helps ease the adversity that you're going through.
Exactly. Because you can look at everything that we have, that we go through, we can look at it two ways. We can let it sink again, or we can say, how can I not only grow through this, but use it as a tool to help everybody else around me? Your teammates. Okay. So this was my failure. Not only how can I grow from it, but how can I use it as a tool to help other teammates coming up behind me
no doubt.
Learn from it? It's how can we always be looking at the battles and adversity and look at how can I use it to serve others? Sure. And that's how we come alongside people. That's how people, have hope and encouragement. Yep. That's what God wants us to use. Everything, sure. Your testimony isn't just, I got saved, I became a Christian. Your testimony is your whole life. Your testimony is everything you've gone through that the Lord has allowed you to come out of. And your testimony is constantly telling people and serving people with, I've been through it too. Let me help you.
Yep.
I've been through it too. Let me show you what I did. And that's what these whole stories are.
Well, think about this. Like your test becomes your testimony. Your mess becomes your message. Like the stuff that you go through is how you end up being able to lead other people. Now, if you're not willing to share that, you're not going to be very impactful on a bunch of other people. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and the trust. Not many people are going to trust you because everybody knows we all got problems. Right. So when you're a leader and you only show people perfection, it's very hard for me to trust somebody like that. And it's very hard for the people you're leading to have the comfort of growing through mistakes. Because when you're somebody who only wants perfection and shows perfection, everybody is only going to give perfection and they're going to be afraid to grow.
No doubt.
So,
no doubt.
In 2015, it says you went 4 and 7 and you learned who your real friends are. I'm curious about this, and I have some follow-up questions if you're going to go where I think you're going to go with this.
Well, we went 4-7, and I think that may be the only losing record we've ever had in our life. And I had some foresight because we were moving up from a 5A school to a 6A school the following year. We graduated a large class of seniors that had played for a North State championship, and we were going to start 18 10th graders in 6A football. So I went to the superintendent and I just told him, I had been there 6 years and we were friends. I was like, look, next year's going to be a challenge. Okay. Like, are you okay with that? If not, I'll leave now, but it is going to be a challenge. And I said, now after that, it'll be pretty good. So anyway, it was a challenge. We went 4-7. Now, what's crazy about sports is everybody wants to look at the scoreboard. Okay. And the inner scoreboard, that was one of the best years of coaching and football that we had ever had. We went 4-7 and lost 4 games by a touchdown or less with a young team it was fantastic. And we knew that, but the people sitting around, all they see is the scoreboard and it's all they care about, throughout that season, it was funny how some of my friends, because that's my school and I'm coaching my friends' kids, how some of them started jumping off the boat a little bit. They're like, 4-7, man. There was a guy, and I know who he was. And, he called into the radio. We had a radio station down there, and the guy on the radio station really didn't have a clue, but because he was on the radio station, everybody listened to him. So a guy calls in and says, well, it's time for Coach Perry to go. Like, he can't do it. He's lost it. It's time for us to get a new coach. And, just like people do, somebody sent it to me. Like, I didn't listen to that crap, but then I heard it and I can never unhear it. Well, you fast forward 2 years, we go 16-0, only the third team in the history of the state to win 16 games. We win a state championship. Everybody's back on the bus. And that guy jumped the fence and was the first dude to hug me. You know what I'm saying? And I sit there and thought it's like, I want to punch him, but I'm not going to punch him. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I just, I just gave him a pass.
Yeah.
But what I learned was this, in my line of work, if you're winning, you got people that like you because you're the coach. Okay. But your true friends and your true inner circle is small. You let us go out here and Nixa and go 2-8 next year. You know what I'm saying? Like all these people that, oh, coach is so good. No, they'll be saying just the opposite because, Nick Saban loses a couple games and I heard Alabama fans talking about wanting to fire him. You're like, come on, but you just learn that your inner circle's small and the people you trust is small, Now, I give them a pass. I understand. It's football. It's a game. It's what people do when they come to the state. I get that. And it doesn't bother me. Like you're entitled to say and do. You just hope you work for a superintendent in a school district that says, I know it's not going to be a great year. Yeah. We got you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's all that really matters. But it was tough. And it was a fantastic lesson that me and my wife had to learn because my wife didn't, she didn't come from that athletic background. So she thought, that if we're friends, we're friends. Well, but when your friend don't get to play, she's no longer your friend. It was a tough lesson. So she's been guarded, her whole career now. Like she tries to pick out her friends with people that don't have kids that play football. Yeah. Because, it's very possible, and a circle's small.
Well, I'm an affirmations person.
Sure.
But I have had to learn through self-reflection to be very cautious of that.
Sure.
Because to live or die by affirmations is to live or die by affirmations.
Yep.
One day you are loved, one day you are hated. And to be on the roller coaster of emotional, it's terrible.
Sure.
And so I think that's why it's so important to be rooted in the one who's always consistent, and that's our Lord.
No doubt.
Because no matter what you do, every day he's consistent in who you are to him. We're always going to be the villain in somebody's story,
sure.
Right? Yes, it's good to be patted on the back, but not to live or die by that. And to understand that if you're going through it and you're somebody, I would encourage you to do that self-reflection. Is this really causing turmoil inside of me? Is it because I'm holding on to something I'm not supposed to be holding on to? And that's the words of other people. And that's why I encourage people, even when people give you encouragement, thank them,
sure.
Be thankful, be grateful, but don't hold that so closely because that's dangerous. People say, well, just let go of the bad stuff. Well, I would also encourage you to let a little bit go with the good stuff so that you're not living or dying by it and understanding that Even if you are let go because you're having a losing season, when you're rooted in the one who's consistent,
Sure.
it's still going to be
No doubt.
okay.
It's a blessing.
Yes.
No
It's
doubt
still going to be
about it.
okay.
Well, I think this, and I often think that lesson was learned, and that's a great lesson in humility, because we want to think more of ourselves sometimes than we should. But I think when we get to the pearly gates and St. Peter or whoever meets us up there, he ain't going to ask one question about how many games you won, how many rings you got. Like, that ain't going to be what's going to come out of his mouth, and for us to think that there's anything that we can do in that realm to earn that, we're foolish, and I get that. Like, I want to win with the best of them, but at the same time, man, I want to help people try to be better and have a smile and bless somebody's day. To me, is much more important than winning a ball game or anything like that, because
what's going to have eternal ramifications?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
What a child's future.
Sure.
It's exciting to win for an athlete, but for athletes to understand, like, your future is years and years and years. This is 4 years. And so your character is what's going to go beyond high school.
Yep.
Who you are to people, who you are
doubt.
to yourself.
Sure.
So yeah.
And I don't think, I still struggle every day with the thought of I'm not good enough and I don't deserve it. And I don't, I'm counting on, the good Lord to have some grace, you know what I'm saying? And to throw me a little grace my way, because I do struggle with, I'm human just like you are, just like everybody else is, man. And I sin daily, and I do ask the good Lord to forgive me for my sins. And I hope that he'll throw me some grace. But, I do know there's nothing I can do. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's about him. I just need to, do my part and not think too much of myself, for sure.
What would you say to somebody who is the villain in somebody's story right now? And with, the person who was on the radio saying that to you, how would you encourage them to walk through that, to get out of it and not to let it isolate and freeze them and think, oh, well, I guess I'm just not a good coach. And then your performance goes down.
You know what? It's really hard. Like, I have friends right now that, like in this field is struggling, because of things like that. But I think, number one, you've got to be secure in who you are and who made you and what your purpose is, and understand that, maybe you're not good enough. Maybe you do need to improve. Maybe you do need to work harder, learn more, grow more, like, give them a pass. Don't let somebody else control your thoughts, like, you control you, put better stuff in, change the message, like, we all wake up every day with a story going on inside of our head. Who's going to author the story? Don't let somebody else, and we're wired toward negativity. So if somebody says something negative, we want to remember that over and over and over. You got to let that go. Just like with your affirmations, you got to replace it with something good. I have and it's a cartoon looking hairnet that has a door on it. It's a picture that just visually helps me. It's a hairnet and it has a door and it has a bouncer. Okay. So, like, if a negative thought comes, I choose to let it in or to kick it out, So, like, I will verbally say, you're not welcome here, go elsewhere. And then I will flip it to something positive. So if somebody says, there's somebody now after me because, they don't like me or whatever. And I'm like, and I'm not going to think about that. I'm not even going to go there. Like, I'm happy with who I am, and I'm going to pray for them that maybe the good Lord can touch their heart, because, man, that's on them. Like, their misguided opinion is not on me. You know what I'm saying? If I have looked at it and it's not founded, you know what I'm saying? So you got to be good to yourself, and you can't let them thoughts, they're going to come in, but you got to kick them out, man. So I have this visual image of this bouncer, and I just kick mine out. I don't waste no time over negative stuff.
And some people can be like, well, that's easier said than done. But here's the deal. Habits have to be worked like a muscle. You picked up a 20-pound weight, and to some kids or adults, me, that's going to be heavy to me, guys. It's heavy.
Sure.
But I'm going to keep lifting it. If I don't lift it, if I don't exercise that 20-pound weight, I'll never be able to lift it.
Sure.
But if I keep doing it, no matter how hard it is, it's going to get easier as I do it. And then I'm going to be able to move to a 30-pound weight. And so yes, it's easier said than done, but the more you practice it, even if you practice it for the first time and fail at it an hour later, you've still practiced it.
Yep.
Practice it 2 more times after that. Keep doing it. Don't give up and don't say, well, I've had to retry it 20 times today. But be proud of yourself that you retried it 20 times.
Sure.
And you're eventually, and I say weights, but you're eventually going to be lifting 100-pound weight.
Yep.
That's that thick skin. The more you build it, the more you practice it, and you don't give up.
That's right.
And be proud of yourself even through those failures.
Well, what people want to do is they want to, anything physical, they understand that it's pretty easy, right? To figure it out. You know, like if you want to lose weight, don't eat as much. If you want to lift more weights, then lift daily, but the mental skills is the exact same thing. They are muscles, and you want to be, like you can only have one thought at a time. Like our brain can only handle one thought. Now it handles a bunch of thoughts a day, like 70,000 thoughts a day, but you have one at a time. So you can't be grateful and hateful at the same time. So you get a hateful thought, replace it with a grateful thought. Well, how do you replace it with a grateful thought? You wake up every single morning of your life, 365 days, and you write down 3 things that you're grateful for every day for 365. I promise you, you're going to be able to get to grateful a lot quicker than somebody that don't do that. It's just a skill. And there are skills, that you can overcome the negativity, but you do got to work at it because we are programmed, of those 70,000 thoughts we have a day, like 77% of them are negative. That's just the way it is, that's so we have to guard ourselves and, practice the things that can change us. And that was one of the things the reading did. Like I don't read books about terrible horror flicks, right? Like I'm reading books about how to be positive, how to be a leader, people that have done great things. Like the more good you put in, the less room you have for a lot of bad, and there are, like you said, and that was fantastic, was just practice it more. And you're not going to learn it in a day, right?
No.
I mean, good Lord, you gotta do the work.
Yes. And even if you have to, like what you were saying, writing things down that you're grateful for, even if you have to reach at the very bottom of the barrel, reach down there.
Yeah.
Like if you're just, I am thankful that the trees are green and not snow or something, write it down.
Sure.
And then the more you put the pen to the paper, it's actually going to start in practice coming. So don't be hard on yourself and say, well, I don't have anything grateful for today.
No. There's always something to be grateful for.
Always.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
So you lost a state championship game.
Yeah.
So how was that for you?
It was awesome. By that time we had already learned that, it's the process that matters. We can't control the outcome. So like that day we played really good. Like we played a great game, and we got beat by a team that had one of the best players in the country, and he played awesome that night. To this day, it's one of the best performances I've ever seen by a high school kid. And like, it is what it is. I mean, it wasn't meant to be. And, we can control us. We played really well. They just played a little better. You know what I'm saying? So there was nothing, like you want to win, and, you're sitting there thinking, because at that time I had been coaching, 20 years or whatever it was. And you think, well, you may never get back here. So that negative voice does creep in and you start like, man, I hope we didn't miss an opportunity. But man, we played great. Our kids did exactly what we practiced and planned to do. And it just wasn't good enough that night, So it wasn't like, that wasn't that hard.
So what can you tell other leaders and coaches to learn from this? What is the mindset? What is the growth mindset they can have so that a big loss doesn't fuel anger? So that it doesn't fuel anger towards players, so that it doesn't make it a negative experience. What is some key points in a mindset for a big loss?
Well, number one is to understand that the process is greater than the outcome. So if the weekly process is great, then the outcome is what it is. Like I use this analogy all the time. If you and I go play tennis, you look a little more fit than me. So if you beat me, but I play as good as I can play with great effort and I give it all I got, am I a failure? Nah, I might lose the scoreboard, but I can still be a winner and be successful in life. So like our definition of success is, we stole it from John Wooden, who was a famous basketball coach, was we just want to be the best we can be, the very best that we can be. And, that's all we can do. And if we do that, we're successful. So the scoreboard, like, I mean, it's important, but like, we're not looking at that. So if we wake up every single day of our life with the thought of today, I'm going to put my head down and go to work and figure out how to learn something, how to get better, how to, handle an issue better, and not worry about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 10 weeks down the road. Like, that's how good things happen. When you sit around and start looking into the future, then worry creeps in. You start worrying about this, start worrying about, no, look, I only scored an 18 on ACT, so I'm not that smart. All I'm trying to figure out is how to be the very best, football coach, husband, whatever I can be today. And tomorrow I'm going to wake up at 4 o'clock and I'm going to get up and do the exact same. I'm going to read. I'm going to go to school early for weights. And we're going to, I'm not worried about, right now who wins the first ball game or who. We got to win the day first, and if you win the day enough times in a row, then, you're going to win enough of those outcomes. You can't be like goals. Goals are great, but like goals are misleading. Like if all I do is sit around and think about, the 2024 Class 6 state championship, like what's that going to do for you? It don't do nothing. I mean, that's just a thing. Like, but if my goal is tomorrow to be the very best that I can be for Nixa High School, then we're going to have a chance. You know what I'm saying? But like, I asked the kids the other day because I thought it was, comical. I'm like, what are our goals? They can't tell you. We don't even talk about that. We talk about core values, like Monday's family, Tuesday's hard work, Wednesday's commitment, Thursday's positive attitude, and Friday is courage and compete. We talk about that, and we'll teach lessons about how to be a family, how to work hard, how to be committed, how to, and every day, let's just try to be better, and don't worry about the next year. We went 16-0 and we were great. So I would get this question, like, are you worried about that streak? Like you've won like so many in a row. Yeah. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even know what our record is. All we're going to do is have the best practice we can have today. That's all we're going to do. That's it. Like, and then tomorrow we're going to wake up and do the same thing. So like win, lose or draw, it's not going to change. Like we're still going to do what we do. And if we win, great. If we lose, so be it.
Which I think learn from it. Is really impactful for youth to learn, because that is very beneficial in the adult world.
Sure.
Because you will never hit the mark every time. No. You never will. There is not. If there is somebody who has, I need to meet them.
No, okay? They don't exist.
Because I think the only person is Jesus at this point.
That's right.
Like I don't know.
That's right.
Or you're lying.
That's
like
right.
I don't know what to tell you. So to understand those things now, for the youth to understand that now, for the youth to learn those skills of what to focus on a day-to-day basis is extremely important, for life skills.
No doubt.
Life skills.
No doubt.
So.
No doubt.
So how did you end up moving to Nixa?
That's a God story for sure.
Okay. Please share it.
Well, I'm at Pearl, my home school, and me and the superintendent are best friends. Me and the school board president are best friends. Like, life's great. And I have a friend that's interviewing for the job in Nixa. He had retired from Mississippi. He had went to Arkansas and spent 5 years, and he was looking to go to another state. So he interviewed in Nixa. Well, on his second interview, he started calling me and he said, for some reason, I think this is your job and not mine. And I'm like, I'm not looking for a job. I'm completely happy where I'm at. He said they were building the auditorium, right? The theater. My son was a theater star. My daughter had just taken a job in Chicago. So Nixa was halfway to Chicago. So when we thought, I was like, nah. But then we thought, well, we've never been to Missouri, so why don't we investigate it and see if they would be interested? And because sometimes if, one out-of-state coach tells you no, you just like, we're not going to do that again. Let's get somebody we know will take it.
Mm-hmm.
But they were, and we ended up thinking, we'll just go take us a trip on a school, right? We'll let school pay for us a trip. We'll go up there, see Missouri. So me and my wife just, we get us a long weekend. So we come up here, ride around, they show us around. And at that time, honestly, we have no intentions of honestly coming up here. We just was thinking maybe we'll take us a trip. Then we get up here and we kind of liked it. We're like, that's pretty nice. We kind of liked it. So we ride back home, we talk about it. And our son was going into the 9th grade and he is a theater star. He just got accepted into CCM, which is a conservatory in Cincinnati that was like his first choice. Less than 5% of the kids get into that program. So he wanted to be a star.
Yeah.
And I walked back in the field house. We got back to school on a Monday And I walk into the field house at Pearl after our trip up here, and I'm standing there and I'm watching all of our coaches and all of our players work out. And I'm just like, and I had this thought. I'm like, they can do this without me. Like they really could. Like they didn't need me. Like everything was going, so I'm like, maybe I called my wife and said, maybe we need to go. Maybe we need to. I think it might be fun to see if we can do what we did here somewhere else where we don't have no connections, where we don't know anybody. So we went home, threw it out on Jay, our son, and kind of let him decide. And he had done some research and he decided that he wanted to go. He thought it would be best for him. So we went, and to be honest, that probably, there's nobody in that town that thought we were going to do that, including my parents, who still live in that town. But, I think the good Lord, led us where he wanted us to be. Sometimes I'm not really sure why, but I do know that we went to bed at nighttime and we prayed, like, man, help us out. Do you want us here? Or do you not? There's a reason why, we were put on the mind of Jamie Mitchell, who was the coach that had come up here, because we weren't close friends. We were acquaintances, but, and then we come up here, it was just weird, and I think sometimes, God has, in my family, we call it God winks. And I think that was a God wink. You know what I'm saying? I think that was I think we're where he wanted us to be for whatever reason. And it has been fantastic. Like we have enjoyed it. We've grown, as a couple, and, it worked out for Jay's fixing to, hopefully get to Cincinnati. So I don't know. I think God wanted us here for whatever reason, and we listened enough to get here, and, it's been a blessing.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And we're glad you're here. Not just for coaching, but again, like I said, I think our youth, they don't just learn from you as a football coach. They learn from you in so many other ways. And that's not every coach.
Sure.
It's not. And so I think you're a blessing to our kids. So you do mental skills training with Chance Potts, but you also started the Never Stop Getting Better podcast. Now, I want to know what led you to start this. It's really good. I listen to it. It's very hard for me to stay focused or anything to engage me. And yours, I can listen to every episode. So kudos. And so what made you start that?
Well, first of all, I carry my goals in my pocket, okay? Because they say if you write them down, they may come true. In 2022, one of my goals was to start a podcast. And I wanted to start one because I'm a lifelong learner. One of my core values is curious. I'm an extremely curious person. I want to learn. And I wanted to start one because I listened to so many. And I thought, like when you get on a plane, they give you the announcement about if the cabin loses pressure, they say put the mask on yourself first, because if you can't help yourself, you can't help nobody else. Well, to me, I was thinking like, man, this would be a great way to help myself. So I want to start a podcast in 22, and I failed. Like I didn't do it. So, I had it again in 23. It was to start one by February the 15th. And I failed again, you know what I'm saying? So, but I did end up starting it like in April or May of 23. And my purpose was, to grow, to learn, to get better, to have conversations. And I was scared to death to do it, hence the reason why my wife bought me a speaker, like one of these microphones in 22. And it's set on the floor for over a year because I was scared to death. Who am I going to talk to? Who am I going to interview? How am I going to do it? How am I going to learn how to, and finally, one day I just, you have to do it. Just do it, and figure it out after the fact. So instead of YouTubing it, I paid a guy $750 to create the podcast and to teach me how to, load it in there and stuff like that. And then, I just started asking people. Like I've always been a curious person, or for a lot of my life. So I do have a lot of connections, and I'm not scared to ask. So if I saw somebody send me an Instagram post of Mason Sawyer, if you've not listened to that one yet, you need to listen to that one. He lost 5 family members in one car wreck, and it was tragic. But when I saw the Instagram 2-minute deal, I'm like, I got to get that dude on, So I start trying to locate his phone number, inbox, and I will ask anybody for anything. Like it does not matter to me one iota. And man, it's been awesome. Like it has been a real blessing to get it started. And now, on my computer, I'm probably 6 or 8 weeks ahead of schedule, because I keep running into these people and I keep doing it. And, to me, it's added value to my life. And I know because people are generous enough to reach out and to send feedback. There are other people in the world that have benefited from listening to some of the episodes. And, I think Nick Saban, when he was at Alabama, every day after practice, he got a microphone stuck in his face and he told a short message. Well, his short message was directed to somebody. Well, for me, the podcast kind of does that because I know I got kids listening. I know I got parents listening. So when I do a Monday solo edition on how to be a teammate, man, I'm talking to my kids, and I know some of them are catching it, so I don't know. I figured it was a way to add value and to have fun in the process. And it has been a blast.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And I love that you said you were hesitant for that long.
Scared.
Yes, because how many times do people not fulfill the plan God has for them because they're scared?
Yeah.
And what did it take? One action.
Yeah, just
one
do it.
Step.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then once you start, you kind of gain momentum, right?
Yes.
And momentum, once that flywheel gets going, great things happen, but you have to start. And there are a ton of people that die, with blessings inside of them that they never used. There's a book. I got a book for everything, okay? Life is a Gift by Bob and Judy Fisher. They interview like 100 people that are in hospice, like on their deathbed, and they ask them all the same questions, and they get these answers back. And, when they asked them, what was your biggest regret? 0 answers about how much money I made, 0 answers about my job, 0 answers about my car, 0 answers about I did too much stuff. It was about relationships and I didn't do enough.
Yeah.
Period. You know what I'm saying? So like while we're living, let's do it. Now I've got a little inner circle of folks that one of my other buddies in Birmingham, he started a podcast, and I'm like, man, that's awesome. And I'm trying to get the other 3 in the group to start one just for the heck of it, but just do it, and if it don't work out, so what?
But I think too, something that like when I do a lot of things that are out of my comfort zone, but I also know that we will never, ever, ever grow in our comfort zone.
Right.
And I never want to be somebody that stops growing. And if you think that you're at the point of total growth, then I feel bad for you.
Yeah.
Because you will always be growing, and,
no doubt.
and it will never happen in your comfort zone. But the thing is, when you're stepping out of your comfort zone and to do something that is scary, to remember it's never about us in the first place. I think the reason we don't do things is because we make it about us.
Sure.
I do it all the time.
No doubt.
So like I am not preaching at you, I am preaching to myself.
Sure.
But to understand, so I'm going to start doing this, a podcast. But what if it doesn't reach anybody? But what if it reaches one?
No doubt.
And it's that one person that needed to hear that one thing.
That's right.
That one day.
That's right.
That matters.
Yeah.
So fine. It only reached one. Look out. We need to start looking outward. How can this serve others and not myself? When we constantly want to serve self, that's where we start looking at, well, the numbers aren't good or this isn't good.
Sure.
Well, because we're serving our ego.
No doubt.
And so if you're somebody listening and you're scared to step out, I would encourage you to think, but what if I do step out and it helps the one person God knew needed it?
No doubt.
And so I would let that get you out of your fear.
Yeah.
Or hearing, John say, hey, I was scared, but I did it. And look,
sure.
I tell people often the first time I ever spoke, it was at a university and I was terrified.
Sure.
I was terrified. I woke up in the middle of the night at the hotel and I was like hot. I was hot. I was like, okay, I got to go. I got to get my bags. And everybody's sleeping and I'm around the hotel room and I'm like, okay, how do we get the bags? How do I get out of here without letting them down?
Sure.
I'm going to let them down. They're going to have no speaker tomorrow. And I'm freaking out. Right.
Yeah.
And I said, no, Megan, in the name of God, you will not listen to these thoughts. You will go and you will do what you were supposed to do. And so guys, be encouraged. Like when you hear things, fear is normal.
Yeah,
fear is normal because we're human. It's like an auto response. Don't listen to it.
No.
Because every time you listen to it, you will never see your future.
That's right.
So,
and you got to flip it. You think about, like speaking and having a fear of speaking. It's one of the greatest fears in the world. Like it just is for everybody, but if you flip the story, like if it's about you, you're going to be fearful. But if you can flip the story to, look, man, I got something to share and there's somebody in this room that the good Lord wanted me to share it with. and you start thinking about them and stop thinking about you, it don't become quite so fearful. You know what I'm saying? That's just the way life works. We live in this, like comparison world where we try to compare ourselves to others. And that's where fear comes from, because we're not good enough. We're not, we don't make enough, or we don't do this enough. Like that comes from, just us trying to compare ourselves instead of what can we do to add value to another human? And if you've got something in you that, you feel like needs to come out, it needs to come out and help them, and be grateful that you have the audience to do that. If it's one, if it's 100, if it's 1,000, you know what I'm saying? Just deliver it to the person that's listening, no matter who that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Quality over quantity.
Amen.
Yes. I want to ask you some things as a coach. You had talked about on your podcast, bullying, kids getting bullied. So parents who are listening, what are some things you can tell parents to help them help their kids in sports who are being bullied by other players?
I would think it's a great opportunity to have a conversation with your kid about how everybody's not nice. Everybody in this world doesn't do things, the right way. And more so that when a kid is a bully or a kid says negative things or it's really more about, like that kid or that kid's parents. They aren't good enough. It's not you, it's not anything. It's what they're doing. And to me, I just see them as less than, and I have an opportunity to be more than. So, I would teach my kid, man, lean into it and just say, hey, I'm okay with whatever you say. Like your words can affect me, and let them know that kid that is saying the hurtful things is struggling. They are trying to bring you down to their level. And anybody that's ever done anything on this world worth anything, there are going to be people throw rocks at them. Like Jesus Christ, the one who never sinned. What happened to him? Right? Like he hung on a cross. I mean, so it's okay. Like let it go. Don't hold that against them. Just give them a pass. You know what I'm saying? Now, if it moves into something physical, then obviously you got to go tell somebody. But words, man, that's just, they don't know no better. Bless their heart, and thank God that you have an opportunity to learn that there are cruel people in this world that suffer, and they're just trying to bring you down. Flip it from what could be a negative for them to a positive. And what you'll normally find is they'll go mess with somebody else because they're not getting what they want. If you smile at them, to this day, and there's a few parents in this world that don't like me, right? Because I didn't play their son. But to this day, if I see them, man, I'm going to smile and I'm going to pat them on the back and I'm going to say, man, it sure is great to see you. And I don't care what they say. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's me. I mean, that's, and I think for a kid, that's a great opportunity to learn that lesson at a young age, because kids are cruel. They just are. But because they say it, don't mean that it has to stick. And it's really less of them. And, it's a great opportunity for you.
And adults are cruel. So
amen.
Learn it like you and your,
Amen.
like learn it young, learn how to work through that young. And it'll be way easier when you're older to work through it, because it never stops. Like, I think kids are like, well, when I'm an adult, it'll get so much easier. Absolutely, it will not. You just have a bigger pool of people. No. So
and just delete them on social media.
That's right.
If they ever say anything, block them.
That's right.
Then you ain't got to see it.
I think somebody goes, I bless you and I block you.
No doubt about it.
Yep.
I love that.
Well, Coach, I am so appreciative that you came on. I'm thankful for you and the things that you were able to instill and encourage through your story. And we will see everybody next time.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I was truly honored.
Yes.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.